Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for March 13th, 2023. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for adoption of the agenda. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council adopts the agenda as amended to allow for the opportunity to undertake closed session items prior to the timing of delegations at 5 p.m.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Just for the record, Councillor McLean is not able to attend this afternoon. Item 3, no public hearings. Item number 4, adoption of minutes. Item 4.1, minutes, regular meeting of Council, February 27th, 2023. Mr. Thibault.
The regular meeting minutes are in front of Council for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions, concerns? Councillor Brown.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on February 27th, 23 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arising, there is none. Item 5.1, feral and stray cat discussion. Mr. Thibault.
So the cat came back. This is the third time. Administration went away and got some additional information with respect to the program. So there was a question around what would the cost look like if there were something less than the identified 130 animals for $10,000. So I did get that update and provided it there in the background. So basically there is a sort of preliminary step that the service provider does. They already know who the people are in town to talk to because those people do get food and stuff from this particular service provider. So they would have conversations with the local folks. I'm sure that TPS would also be one of those contacts. And then they would move forward with next steps depending on what that number sounded like. So if it was 50 cats, they would do something different than a full clinic that would be around 100 cats. Very rarely do they have something that's less than 100 cats, I've been told. And if in fact they went over what we deem to be $60 an animal for 130 animals, the cost will not go above the $10,000 that they've already quoted us. So that's kind of the upset limit. And as mentioned previously, we had put $16,000 aside in the operating budget. And so that's the recommended motion that administration has put forward. And if there are any other questions, I'll try to field them.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. If they are saying it won't be more than 10,000, why are we going to approve 16,000?
So 16,000 was already approved in the operating budget and is there to use. And this has happened a bit backwards from normal. Typically, when it's already approved in the operating budget, we don't come back and have these types of discussions. But because we put this in not knowing if we wanted a feral cat program or not, that's why administration has come back and had these conversations. So there is 16,000 in there, and I just put up to the amount of $16,000 because that's what was already previously approved, but we will not be going above 10 with these folks.
And they're confirming it won't be above 10,000.
They have confirmed that, yes.
Okay, could we not just approve 10,000 from the 2023 operation budget?
You could do what you want, but 16,000 was already approved. It would be an adjustment to an already approved operating budget amount. This is more for your information as to what it was going to cost out of the 16. If we did this in any other way, we would only spend what it is that we need to spend, and the rest goes back into operating reserves anyway. So there's no harm of us. There's no way of us overexpending, I guess, what's already approved.
Yeah, as long as we hold them to the 10 and we don't go over it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd.
Well, I've had a look at this, and if if this must be done, that is pretty good value for the 10,000 to look after 130 cats, and so I would be in support of it. But I just have some questions around that, and just looking at what their proposal includes, and they're talking about, in their very first point included in the fee is veterinary care, so that means must be a vet that includes the spay or neuter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. More extensive veterinary care will be outsourced to a veterinary clinic, and I just wonder, like, is their vet not as qualified as what that vet needs to be, and is that included in the $10,000 worth of costs?
So everything mentioned in the proposal is included in the $10,000 cost. I don't know enough about veterinary clinics to know if there's a different level of care in Tabor versus what's in Calgary. So the conversation I did have with the service provider is on that point, if there's some level of care that's required beyond what they can do here, those animals go back to Calgary and they don't get reintroduced into our population. They do something with rehoming or things like that in Calgary, and they do seem to get, if they had 100 animals, typically there's 12 or 14 that end up going back to Calgary for a different level of care. So what I know from healthcare, on people, is that they divide it into particular, Calgary can do things that Medicine Hat can't and that sort of stuff. But I have no idea if veterinarians are like that.
Well, the key in your answer for me was that it's not gonna go over the 10,000, so
Correct.
that's great. And I'm just curious, who are our designated community caregivers who will provide, clean up these, cat colonies and, look after things, provide food, water, and shelter, and all that. So there's got to be, who would those people be?
I don't know the actual names of the people. I know that
There are people.
there are people. Chief Abella is aware of a couple of names. I think that we had dealt with one of the ladies in the past through the previous program,
Okay.
and she's still very aware of what's going on in the cat population world, as is TPS. And it sounds like that this service provider is in contact with other people who request food donations and stuff from them, so they know who the players are, but I don't know those names.
Okay, and just a last point, not really a question, but, their needs from the community include a facility, and, as they described in that paragraph number 2, or bullet number 2, and, it just occurred to me that might be our Lost Paws site.
We haven't actually decided on what that facility might be, but something like that. They've actually worked out of places like in our auditorium. They've worked out of places like that in the past to run the clinics as well. So it's probably dependent on how many animals they think they're gonna be after.
Just a suggestion, that's all.
Yep, good, thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Counselor Sorensen.
This is a hot topic for us all. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I just have a couple comments. and
Sure, you bet.
questions. Has the Last Chance Cat Ranch agreed to do the post-program aftercare as required?
So the Last Chance Cat Ranch is out of Lethbridge, and they're the ones that take the cats that come from here, be it feral or not feral, and they were the ones that expressed interest in a program like this happening because they're getting a lot of cats from Tabor, and unfortunately I couldn't get those numbers from the lady. She was in critical care in Edmonton, and I don't know if she's even still around anymore. But they were the ones who initiated this, but they're not participating in hand with this provider. They're just the ones that we end up bringing our cats to. We have no cat facility, and I'm aware of in Tabor. Dog, yes, but cats, not so much.
So that was just who's gonna agree to the aftercare, so seems like it can be worked out perhaps. And it also states that if the owner of the cats provides proof of low income, that they will also qualify for this program. And we kind of discussed, what if there is an owner to this cat? Are they gonna be agreeance to it having a clipped ear or a tattoo or so forth? So I'm just wondering if we can have further discussion on that.
I think last time that might have been discussed a little bit. So every animal is checked for a chip or some kind of identification to know if it's someone owns it or not. And I think from talking to the provider, they understand what they're looking at, feral cat versus not. I maybe don't. I could tell you what one wily cat really looks like, but this is a service provider that's been doing this for a lot of years, and I think based on what we've done in the past with them, they know the difference, and they would contact an owner if they catch one that is chipped or whatever.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Counselor Sorensen?
Yeah, I'd be prepared to make a motion that council directs administration to use up to the previously approved $16,000 from the 2023 operational budget for the purpose of administering a feral cat catch, spay, neuter, and release program.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Counselor Bruin?
I just, like there it says, use up to previously approved, so we're not, why are we using up to? Can we say instead of friendly amendment that we'll use 10,000 of the previously approved 16,000?
Wrong button. Yeah, I'd accept that friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Tebow, just to confirm, that's not creating any difficulty with what's in the operating budget currently?
I know there's $16,000 there, so
Okay. All right.
if council wants to approve 10 of it, then that means for sure 6 of it is going to go back
I see.
into operation
Okay.
reserves.
All right, very good. All right, friendly amendment budget, or sorry, friendly amendment motion rather, on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6 bylaws, item 6.1, corrections for bylaw 2-2023, Mr. Tebow.
Okay, I'm going to try my best on this one. So we had some emails going back and forth. The administration had noticed on the previous second and third readings of this particular bylaw that the incorrect bylaw number was referenced on that bylaw. All the content was accurate, but in speaking with Municipal Excellence and Administration, we were not able to just call that a clerical error and make a correction. So we're asking that the second and third reading with those resolution numbers gets rescinded, and today that we do the second reading with the appropriate amendments in the bylaw number, and only the second reading to just provide some time for the public in case there was anything. But as previously noted, the first reading went out, all the advertising was correct. The bylaw numbers actually were correct in the initial first reading that went out to the public in the paper. And there was no opposition to anything that was in there originally. So kind of a administrative formality, but that's where we're at with it. If there was any further questions, Selena is here to field anything.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
It just seems to be an administrative correction, so I don't see an issue with that, and I'd be prepared to make a motion.
All right, very well.
Make the following motion that council rescinds resolution 43/2023, moved by Councillor Rudd for the second reading of bylaw 2-2023, given on February 13th, 2023, to amend the land use bylaw 13/2020 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the second required motion. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council rescinds resolution 44-2023, moved by Councillor McLean for the third reading of bylaw 2-2023, given on February 13th, 2023, to amend land use bylaw 13-2020 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the third required motion, Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 2-2023 to amend land use bylaw 13-2020, amending all references to bylaw number 21-2022 in the attached draft from 21-2022 to 2-2023.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.2, proposed bylaw 4-2023, long-term borrowing. Mr. Tebow.
We'll get Mr. Orwa to come to the front because we're talking money.
All right, thank you. Mr. Orwa.
Good afternoon, His Worship and members of council. Now, before you is proposed bylaw 4-203 for the long-term borrowing wastewater secondary clarifier area project. Now, there are two things that I would like to bring to your attention. Remember, this is the debenture that will be serviced by the infrastructure fee. But when we brought this one last time, I did bring an amortization schedule to show you exactly what the interest rate would be. And I did mention that I was following the pattern behavior of the feds and what they were doing with the interest rates. And for sure, it has really gone up. Now, if you take me, Mr. Tebow, to yeah, that one. So if you just take it up a little bit, just down a little. So reference on the right-hand side, you can see now currently it's a term of 20 years and the interest rate is sitting at 5.27 if I were to get that loan today. But when I showed you this one in 2022 October, the interest rate was 5.07, so it has gone up by around 0.2. And remember, the last or final interest rate will be when we actually send in the paperwork to get the loan. The reason why we delayed a little bit is we also applied for some additional grants from Alberta Wastewater Program. Now, if we manage to get a little bit of that grant, then we'll borrow less. So that is what's happening now. For today, it's just a requirement under MGA so that we can advertise this loan and wait, because there's 2 weeks there for advertisement. Then thereafter, we'll bring it back for the final readings. That is why when you look at the bylaw, I've put to borrow up to 3 million. That means I'm considering that we might get some grants to offset.
All right, any questions arising? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orva, did you say you applied for the Alberta Wastewater Program from Alberta government?
Yes, so we've applied for some grants there to offset, because if they were able to fund this Clarify project, if it does, then we'll borrow less.
Yeah,
If we don't get, then we'll just go for the full borrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Follow up then. Sure. What's the amount, what's percentage-wise, Mr. Orva? Can you give us an idea about that?
We're looking at about 30%.
30%. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did you say that up to the first 3 years, that if we still have up to 3 years, once we get this in place, to still apply for grant?
No, what I said is before we apply for the loan, because we get our loan from Alberta Treasury and it's fixed. So before I apply for that loan, I want to see the possibilities of getting grants in. If let's say we get a grant of about $1 million, that means I will only apply for 2 million. So what we're doing now is to start the process, because it has to be advertised, and then after a while, we start the paperwork to send to the government to get the loan.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I don't know if you have experience with this, but if grants become available, say 5 years out, for similar projects, would we still qualify because as we've already gone ahead and done what was necessary?
We might qualify, but the only difference is that if we were to offset the Alberta Treasury loan, then we have to pay the full amount. We can't just say, because it's fixed.
Can't put a lump sum into it or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
But on the same token, we're also looking at other areas. Maybe that might come, because right now we've engaged, if you recall, we've engaged some company out there to help us with grant writing. So this is one of the areas that we put before them. They might also be lucky to look at other areas that might help us before we send the final paperwork for the loan.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions arising? Someone prepared, I can't say that, prepared to make a motion, please. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be prepared to make the motion. Oh, I have to get to that page. That council approves first reading to the long-term borrowing wastewater secondary Clarify rehab project, bylaw 4-2023 at this meeting.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth, you had a question also? Okay, fair enough, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to action items, item 7.1, appointment of deputy mayor. Councillor Rudd, if you don't mind, if you join me at the front, take care of the oath of office, if you wouldn't mind there, please. Councillor Rudd, if you just won't mind taking the Bible in your hand and just reciting the oath of office as
Good.
required.
Okay, thank you. I, Alfred, swear that I will diligently, faithfully, and to the best of my ability execute according to law the office of Deputy Mayor for the town of Tabor for the term of March 1st, 2023 to October 31st, 2023. So help me God.
All right, thank you. Just need your signature there. 2 copies here. Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
And welcome
whoops.
aboard.
That's it.
Welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you.
That's it.
I've got a different name for you.
Yeah. Okay, cancel that last one.
All right. And I'd just like to thank Councillor Firth for her many efforts in the role as Deputy Mayor as well. Thank you. No motion required in that regard. On to item 7.2, patron disciplinary policy. Mr. Tebow.
So this policy, along with the next three, are our typical 3-year review. This particular policy has one addition on it of our standard policy statement that's in all the other policies that have come forward for this type of review. If there were any questions, Mr. Martin is here to toss those questions too.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder, when the procedures are developed, if there's any, like enforcement, allowance for enforcement, or what would that look like? Is it gonna require a bylaw, or just use the laws that are available? I can see that they would be applicable, so. Has that just, I guess, has that been anticipated?
Thank you. Mr. Tebow?
I don't know the details of what's in the actual procedure. Procedure and policy do come together. Council looks after the policy, and I'm able to sign off on the procedure. So I can certainly get back to you by way of email, but I can't speak to the procedure right at this moment in time because I don't know what it says in it.
Thank you. Any other questions arising? All right, somebody to make that motion. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion then. That
Very well.
council, that council approves the patron disciplinary policy renewal, PS-REC-10 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to recreation facility signage policy renewal. Mr. Tebow.
So same spiel for this one. This one has no recommended changes from administration, so as was.
Thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering where the fees are, if rooms were designated or named after someone, where would we find the charges for that? Or is that ever addressed?
Any fees that we do charge reside in the fee bylaw. It comes up once a year, so anything associated to this would come out of the fee bylaw somewhere.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Someone prepared to make that motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approves the recreation facility signage policy renewal, PS-REC-9 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.4, naming rights policy renewal. Mr. Tebow.
There's no adjustments to this particular policy either with this 3-year review from administration.
Thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council approves the memorial tree policy renewal, PS-REC-12 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councillor Sorensen. Pardon me?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we
All
read
right.
the correct one, Councillor Bruin.
What did you do, Jack? Naming rights.
Item 7.4, I think you were speaking to item 7.5.
Sorry? So I'm just missing something. What went wrong there? Counselor Sorensen?
I think we just skipped ahead, so I'd be willing to make a motion at this time for 7.4.
For the naming the rights policy?
Right, yeah. If that's all right, Mr.
Sure,
Mayor.
yeah, okay.
So I make a motion that council approves the naming rights policy renewal PS dot or dash rec dash 6 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to the memorial tree policy renewal.
Yeah, you need
Pardon
to
me?
make a motion to vote on for this particular one. Your motion can still be repeated.
You
Councillor
still, okay, sure, go ahead
Okay,
and do that.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that council approves the memorial tree policy renewal, PS rec dash 12 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.6, proposed 44th Street, 51st Ave intersection improvements. Mr. Tebow.
So this is one of the items that was in the standing items list, and Raman is here to speak to the background and the where we're at.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
My presentation is today about 44th Street and 51st Avenue intersection improvement. And from the February 13th council meeting, the following standing item was brought forward. Resolution 50-2023, moved by Councilor Rudd, that the council directs administration to look into the road conditions at 44th Street and 51st Avenue and come back to council with a report and perhaps a plan. So I have a plan. Westview has a high water table in many areas, which causes road and sidewalks to have a heaving issue. Public Works has done 2 other projects in that area that promotes drainage. The project, if I can have you to go to figure 1, please. That's the one. Okay. The plan is to we remove the curb, put a brand new curb in, and we replace the stormwater catch basin from the middle of the road. We move it to the west side of the road and replace the sidewalks on the south side, and also redo the back lane as is indicated there, because right now that back lane is convex and it should be convex. And for
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Robin, what, the back lane is what?
The back lane has a drainage problem, which
Drainage
is,
problem,
and
okay.
right now it's convex. It's like so.
Okay,
And water comes down, instead of going down in the middle of the alley, it goes to the sides into the neighborhood and under the sidewalk, which will cause it to heave. So our recommendation is to re-level to ensure the drainage from the lane onto the 51st Avenue, and asphalt replacement on 51st Avenue, and in the lane complete the repair. And then Public Work can complete this project in 2023, if that is council preference, or in 2024 in our asphalt replacement program. If this project added to 2024 asphalt replacement project, then we'll get a better cost at that point, because we'll have a bigger project. Engineering and Public Work has done, has been assessing and monitoring the Westfield neighborhood for the efficiency for the past few years. But due to the budget restraint, the repairs are broken into multi-year projects. They are some of the projects that have been completed in the Westview area. Number one is 2018. There you go. And then, which the town placed ripping tile and replaced the sidewalks and repaired asphalt in 51st Avenue at an approximate cost of $65,000. And then in 2020, street improvement part of the 43rd Street was rebuilt for better drainage at the approximate cost of $60,000. So I'm looking for a direction from the council. Council directs administration to add 44th Street and 51st Avenue to intersection improvement project to 2023 capital budget for an amount of $122,400. And I also included the cost estimate you can review. And number two would be council direct administration to add the 44th Street and 51st Avenue intersection improvement project to 2024 capital budget for consideration. So, is there any other question? Any question I can answer?
All right, thank you, Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through Mr. Mayor to, Darren, can you bring up Google Earth on that area? Yes. The other direction. Close right down,
Yeah, right.
over, go down a little bit further for me, please. A little bit further. That's 50th Avenue there, and that's 43rd. Could you make that picture just a little bit smaller, zoom out of it so we see a little more of it? A little bit more, right there. So what I don't understand with this development here, 43rd Street should go straight through to 50th. And I think if we were to do that at this time, it'll take 3/4 of the traffic off that intersection. Because if we did a traffic count on the number of vehicles that will go down that street on 44th Street and turn there every day, we would save that intersection. If we were to extend 43rd right out to 50th, it would make a huge difference for that neighborhood for access. Because everyone that comes into Westview has to do that curve on 51st and 44th. So if we were to go straight down with 43rd, I think it would make a lot of sense. And maybe we wouldn't have to do anything with that intersection except maybe some cold pavement to patch the holes. Spend the money extending 43rd instead of on that intersection. That's a thought I've had. Just to me, it made no sense why it was ever really designed like that.
I can't answer that. I have to look into it and see why was it designed like that.
Because
I can go look into it and come back.
I would like to see what the cost would be to extend 43rd before we spend all the money on that intersection. Because if we could get rid of 50% of the traffic there, that intersection would last much longer. Because there is a lot of turning vehicles there that's chewing that pavement up all the time. So that's something I'd like to see what it would cost, and if it is possible.
Okay, I'll take notes.
All right, thank you, Councilor Ripp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, good report. I understand everything that's going on there. But, I mean, I don't think that can be fixed with just a cold asphalt fixer, because as was explained, we have a convex, it can't get to the drain. The water can't get to the drain, that's the issue, and putting the drain out of the middle of the street over onto the curb and fashioning and shaping that road the way it should be, would fix it. And then in future protection of it, I agree, like if 43rd was open, then it would reduce the traffic flow for sure for that intersection. I do recall, gosh, it's gotta be 10 years ago when I first moved into that neighborhood, and 43rd was open. I think it was just kind of a bit of a gravel access there at one time, and there was discussion, and it was decided that I think there was a long-term plan in place that had been done that showed that closed off, and it didn't get closed off immediately, but then when it did, there was some pros and some cons expressed at the time to do that, and I know that those were in favor of it, because you've got a quiet cul-de-sac to live in as opposed to having, traffic in your neighborhood. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But for sure, I think, access to that area is ideally on Westview, but, we're human. We want to go through the shortcut. So I guess just one follow-up, Mr. Mayor, then, did you think their price estimate was fair? Because in what I'm seeing in numbers for construction projects lately, that actually seems like that's probably about what it would cost,
I'm quite sure it's fair, yeah. For what we get right now, it's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, the prices have gone up, everything has gone up, so.
Yeah, it seemed like a fair estimate, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of questions through to administration. Was this part of an existing repair plan? Like, was this on your radar to have fixed already?
Last year, we looked at this, and I was gonna repair it. It came up, we were gonna repair it, but then something else came up, 50th Street. At the end of 50th Street, I had a concern, I had to address that. So, and that was before this, so.
Okay. That was what I'm just concerned, is this being pushed ahead of other projects that may need to be done, or are we, allocating funds to this when perhaps there's things that were already slated or need to be repaired sooner? And I just wasn't sure how we determine what gets fixed and when. Is it kind of the highest need gets done first?
The highest need, and for example, if somebody's house is getting flooded, or it's in the verge of getting flooded, or water sits in front of their house, and every time something passes by, it splashes into their backyard and so on and so forth, that gets more of a priority. So that's how it comes.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think I brought this up when we were going over our budget and wondering if, there's actually enough money to fix our streets and maintain our sidewalks. And this is a concern of mine, that items aren't being addressed, and maybe certain things are maybe pushed in front of other needed repairs. So I'm not sure how to ensure that we're meeting the needs of everyone, not just, case by case scenario.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckrey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Bruin's comment, has considerable merit to it, I believe. If you can reduce the traffic on 44th Street and divert it to 43rd, open the cul-de-sac up, I think it makes sense to me. But an issue at hand, of course, is this particular problem. And I drove through there a few times, and it's an issue, but it's not burning as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not an engineer or anything like that. And regarding priorities, you know, I think at one time we used to set priorities on the number basis, you know, 1, 2, 3, and up, and then we would address it. Administration would address it with council how we should proceed. But anyway, Mr. Mayor, it seems to me that we can add this project into the 2024 capital improvement budget because it's not a burning issue in my view. But I'm not making a motion.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rudd.
That's precisely what I was going to bring up, because in consideration of that prioritizing, you know, your report has given us, taking that into consideration by offering that second option of going out another year, which is what I would support.
All right, thank you, Councillor Broom.
I would support, 2024 as well. I know there is quite a deep pothole there now that a small car would bury in, but if we could fill that, I still would consider 43rd extending that, because we are, don't forget, going to extend the rest of 43rd out to 56, so we'd have one straight through road with no stop signs on it. So it's something I think we should really look at.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Sorensen?
Sorry, but I guess I'm confused. So if we put traffic through that one street, is it gonna eliminate the drainage problems? Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, I don't know, that's, whenever that was built up in that area, that's been that cul-de-sac variety for a number of years, and to change that, I think would be pretty difficult for particularly the people who live in that area. No, and it is a cul-de-sac, it's designed that way, it was approved that way. I don't know how well that would go over and even how fair that is, actually, for all things considered, so, so to look at it that way, but, there are a couple of motions on the table there, or recommendations rather. If anybody wants to follow through with that. Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, I'd be prepared to make a motion, but before I do, I would say that on our next item, the 7.7, that perhaps Councillor Bruin's concern can be raised in and be put onto a list, and we can get that figure as well. But for now, I'd be prepared to make a motion that council directs administration to add the 44th Street and 51st Avenue intersection improvement project to the 2024 capital budget for consideration.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.7, standing item council requests. Mr. Tebow?
Well, I know I'm not getting away with nothing this time. I heard something come my way already. We'll wait for the official motion. But the three that are on there, Councillor Beckering had made moved to do something with the cart. The survey is out as of March 8th. Stats right now are we've had 184 online hits, I believe. And I don't know how many paper copies have been picked up, but there have been some paper copies picked up from the front and even returned already. So far, there's been an awful lot of interest in this particular survey. So I guess stay tuned. Second one, Councillor Sorensen, making a motion for 43rd Street and 56th Avenue. That's still in progress. There'll be a little bit more discussion around that later on this evening. And for the third item, we just had that discussion and motion made. So it's council's floor.
All right, thank you. Any standing item council requests? Councillor Broom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that council directs administration to look into extending the south end of 43rd Street to 50th Avenue to investigate the viability costs and if we can do it.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Tabor Adult Learning Job Fair where there was 22 employers looking for employees. And I was wondering if we could get administration to reach out to the employers yet again and share the information about our AINP program.
All right, yeah. You have a question directed at Mr. Tebow for that then,
No.
or?
Do I need to make a motion or are you guys already doing that?
I think a lot of that's already been done, actually, just to clarify, but Mr.
So I
Tebow?
could speak to it a little bit.
Sure.
So the meetings have now gone to weekly meetings. It used to be, I think, every 3 weeks or once a month. But there's been such a level of interest that they're holding those committee meetings weekly to get more applications approved. So we are moving along on that, and there's community meetings that happen every third week where businesses are invited. We actually had one just last week over in one of the rooms, I think the green room or something, over at the community center. So those are ongoing all the time. But I'm sure that Amy and Shannon the information's out there. So I would say it's available, and people are certainly welcome to come to those meetings. They're very informative. I typically attend them myself.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other standing item council requests? All right, seeing none. Moving on, delegation, no delegations, meeting inquiries. Mr. Tebow.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say there was none.
All right, thank you. I just asked to move into closed session then, please. Motion to move into closed session. Counselor Beckering,
You bet.
motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.